Thank you for coming and listening to the second and final panel. I have promised that we will get everyone out of here on time to get to the Animoca event after this, so fear not. In the meantime, we have some really great topics that actually perfectly continue from some of the questions raised on the last panel, so I want to get straight into it. Perhaps we can start with some intros. I will go first very briefly. I'm Amanda Cassatt, aka Amanda.eth on X, the founder and CEO of Serotonin. We bring the world's breakthrough technologies to market.
Hey guys, I'm Minh. I'm the COO at Animoca Brands. We are a Web3 builder and investor. We are also the incubators of Realm Network, which is our interoperable consumer layer. It's basically a software stack that will enable Web2 applications to create Web3 presence, on-chain presence for their users instantaneously. So that's what Realm Network is.
Hi, my name is Terence. I'm the founder and CEO of Humanity Protocol. We're building an identity-focused blockchain.
Hi, my name is Malcolm Ah. I'm the co-founder and CPO of Terminal 3, and hopefully by now you know a little bit about what we do. We're a data privacy platform and infrastructure. We provide secure self-sovereign data for user self-sovereign storage for user data, as well as cryptographic access to that data.
Hi, my name is Yifan, and I'm the CEO of Ready Technology. We basically build the blockchain infrastructures and digital currency infrastructures. So we're basically an infrastructure company. Thank you.
So we really have a panel of builders here, and that's super exciting. We heard from a lot of the folks on the institutional side, on the finance side, but these are the people building some of the technologies directly that we're talking about in our space. So let's talk about stablecoins and PayFi first. This is really the future-focused panel, what's going to be happening moving forward. We recently have had huge news around stablecoins. Stripe acquired Bridge. It was the largest ever acquisition in the crypto space, over 1 billion acquisition. We also saw folks like PayPal launching their own stablecoins. Do you think that all of payments or most of payments are going to be running over stablecoin rails? Is that the inevitable future? I don't know where we want to start. Maybe Minh?
Yeah, I think time frame wise, unknown, but short answer is yes. I think long term, kind of the programmability of the blockchain just allows for payments on chain to be so much more superior. I think that what we're going to see, at least, we're going to kind of see two parallel tracks. We'll see institutional adoption through just faster settlement on trade finance and things like that. I think that will come. It's going to be driven by the large institutions because there's definitely just money to be saved just by moving that stuff on chain. And then we're going to see retail adoption of stablecoins in again, two tracks. The unregulated markets are already kind of there. I mean, I think in the markets like Turkey, Argentina, the crypto-friendly markets, this is already happening. And then, hopefully places like Hong Kong where we have the stablecoin sandbox coming out, we will start to see adoption of it. But I think in the developed countries, it's going to really require some kind of catalyst because, the existing payment infrastructure is actually already quite good.
Yeah, so in a lot of the post-industrial world, adding stablecoin products is like selling ice cream to Eskimos, right? There are already so many really high-quality financial products out there. Do you agree, disagree? Maybe Terence next?
I think, in order for stable coins to really be of use for the general public, I think there's a user experience problem right now, in terms of wallets and custody. And as Minh said, for most people, remittances, cross-border remittances, obviously it's slow, it's expensive, but when you look at sort of domestic payments, your FPS in Hong Kong works pretty well. SEPA in Europe works pretty well. So there's not really that big of a use case. But I think there's one thing that is quite interesting where I think stablecoins, and it's actually only over the last couple of weeks that I started thinking about this. And if you look at sort of the potential proliferation of AI agents, right? Where obviously there's a meme coin now that's pretty popular. because of some
Truth terminal.
because of some AI that was
But don't look it up.
that was shilling it, right? And the challenge is you can't really have AI agents having bank accounts, but you can certainly have AI agents or trading bots that are controlling crypto wallets, right? And the idea is maybe it goes from just trading down the road to potential payments and at least small value sort of payments. So I think that's probably where there is a potential use or niche, right? Whereas if we look at what some of the existing payment rails already satisfies, I actually don't think there is much of a need for stablecoins.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard that bull case made before for stablecoins, that it's going to be, regardless of whether it's TradFi or whether it's users interacting with it directly, that AIs are digitally native. So they're going to use digitally native currency and wallets in order to transact. And that's the big bull case, regardless of who the owner or the user is of the coins. Malcolm, do you agree, disagree with that?
Yeah, I think I would agree. I actually think that we're already on that path of where the old payment rails, which is already 50 years old, it's antiquated, it's inefficient, it's costly. Blockchain makes that so much better, right? You get real time, settlement, lower costs. It already provides lots of different use cases. Stablecoin is just one of them, but stablecoins specifically, I think already processes close to 3 trillion annually, right? Which is 2 times PayPal's volume in 2023, which is crazy to think about. And we're only in the beginning, right? But in addition to stablecoin, there's blockchain has already proven payments for credit cards and merchant payments, trade and B2B, cross-border remittance, like all of that is possible, and all of that is already being used today. And so I think we're already there, at least on that path, right? And what's interesting then is, okay, blockchain, if you believe in blockchain, has found this killer product, which is payments and money. And if you believe in that, that actually then means, to bring it back to, kind of trust and the theme of trust, the need for everyone that's actually interacting with payments and interacting with money on blockchain to have verifiable, identities to be able to be using these types of products. So I think we're absolutely already there, and it's going to continue to accelerate and slowly, like you said, eventually take over the traditional.
So you really see identity as the missing piece for stablecoin full adoption?
One of the missing pieces for sure, right?
What do you think, Yifan?
Yeah. First, I totally don't agree, majority money will be stablecoin. I think, probably in 10 years, if stablecoin even survive, it probably counts for less than 1%. Because money is money. If you talk about money, first you have to talk about the liabilities. So first, central bank, when they issue money, definitely not stablecoin. Okay, it will be retail, CDBC, legal tender, sovereign money, and also banks. If they issue a stablecoin, it's not stablecoin, it's called a tokenized deposit. So the liability basically stays with the bank's balance sheet. So the only stablecoin that makes sense is commercial liability. So which means it's non-bank, non-sovereign. So that basically, like today's world, is like a corporate note, circulating, in the public, your own ecosystem. So that means, it will be used very, very limited, probably in the retail. I mean, for Animoca, it makes sense if all the games, use this one currency and settle with each other, that ecosystem totally works. But if you go to a broader, the retail, then people say, why, I rather take central bank money, it's guaranteed, it's money. And, if it's commercial money, then I need to make sure the entity even trustworthy. So then that makes the stablecoin only works in a certain ecosystem or environment. So that's my take.
Yeah, does any of you want to disagree?
I sort of second what he was saying, right? Like I think established rails, et cetera, I think it's pretty mature. That's why I was saying, like, potentially it's the AI play. And then right now, majority of stablecoin activity is either for trading crypto or for, it's regulatory arbitrage, right? In terms of moving large amounts, not having to deal with KYC or AML restrictions. If I want to send $100,000 to Minh, I would use USDT. But largely because HSBC is going to ask me a lot of questions, right? So, but if HSBC didn't really care, I'd probably use HSBC.
I wonder, Minh or Malcolm, if you want to push back on that, because obviously PayPal, Stripe think differently.
Yeah, I think it's a definitional problem. I actually think that, so we're working on a stablecoin with Standard Chartered. It's a stablecoin. It's a bank. You might define that as tokenized deposits, which is that's fine to me. But we're calling it a stablecoin. So I'm like, I think that's like a definitional thing. Like the question is like, is it transfer of value paid against a currency running over blockchain rails? So to me, that's a stablecoin. It's not CBDC, which is what we'll get in China, but it will be issued by a third-party corporation, whether that's a financial institution or a company like Circle. So do I think that those will become like a big part of the payment infrastructure? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I think it's to do with so the AI piece is one thing, but there's so many applications that are going to come up because of this AI trend. So that where you will require these streaming payments that only blockchain rails can provide. And those streaming payments, they could be in non-pegged currencies, but I think the more likely scenario is they'll be in pegged currencies.
I think that's the point that, I sort of want to second to, and maybe it's more about PayFi in general and thinking about what's possible with blockchain rather than specifically only stablecoins. But it's all the new primitives that are now possible because of blockchain, right? So it's the lending protocols that we can do. It's the other types of funding and financing protocols, yield protocols, et cetera. Tokenization, there's all these new products and new possibilities that wasn't really possible before or not even viable before that can now be viable and be used.
Yeah, I think the question draws attention to how there are even many different kinds of things being called stablecoins today, right? Like that basket includes algorithmic stables. It includes fully backed stables in fiat. It includes stable coins that have called themselves that despite losing their peg. So it's really a catch-all. We see a lot of things that are called stable coins. Some of them are pretty centralized. Some of them, and we talked about CBDCs briefly, and some of them are quite decentralized, as in they are decentralized projects issuing them. They are owned directly in Web3 sovereign wallets by their users. There's this whole different range. What do you think is going to happen with centralization versus decentralization? How much of this future world that's happening on chain is going to be centralized versus decentralized? Maybe let's start just to keep things spicy with you, Yifan. I have a feeling of
usually I go last, so I can,
Let's put it out there.
I can buy them. So first, the decentralization and the centralization will coexist, to form the global IT infrastructure, because it's just like database. What your business really fit into? It's a centralized or decentralized. Centralized is more efficient. Decentralized is more transparent and more work together. Kind of data access more freely. So I think they will coexist. But I think for stablecoin, it need to be decentralized. Because if it's a central.
What does that mean? What does it mean to have a stablecoin?
Which means it must be deployed on a decentralized environment, not an Oracle centralized database. So if stablecoin is a centralized database, then why we even need it? The bank account works just fine, right? So that's why but the decentralization really bring in some new benefits than the centralized currency system or identity system, because you can own your own money, right? Just like a crypto, eventually for even CBDC, when you hold that CBDC, it's like cash, It's no longer on, the commercial bank balance sheet. It's only on your balance sheet. So when you pay someone, it's like a cash. Nobody can stop you. Nobody charge you an intermediate fees in that middle. So that's why I think the digital money, token-based digital money is really next generation. I truly believe in that, I only problem with retail CBDC and the stablecoin, the use case probably a little bit limited, but I really believe decentralized regulated money
So it can be tokenized, but it can not be censorship resistant in many cases. So a lot of the leading stablecoins, you can have the contents of your wallet censored by the company issuing the stablecoin. So there's a real spectrum here. Any other opinions of what kinds of things are going to happen along that centralization, decentralization spectrum, not just with stablecoins, but in general?
I do agree with Yifan that it's going to converge at some point, right? We are kind of in a stage in time where we're starting to see that transition, but I actually think in reality there's going to be some sort of convergence, because at the end of the day it's a technology. It doesn't need to necessarily be mutually exclusive. It's actually very complementary, right? There's many benefits of centralized systems today. And you talk about, let's say, finance, CeFi, for example. Minh brought up a good point in terms of UX, right? My dad, for example, could absolutely use Binance, but probably won't learn how to use MetaMask and DeFi, right? There's existing trust in CeFi companies. There's customer service, right, with CeFi. So there's value in having that. But there's obviously value, of course, in decentralization too, with everything that we already know, with the philosophies behind that, right? So I actually think there's a convergence between those two. I don't see it as a mutually exclusive thing.
Each one gets used when there's actually demand shaped right for it. Funny story about understanding the value of CeFi. Pretty much anybody that ever had an ethereum.org email address had the same experience of thousands and thousands of emails. Hi, I lost my private key. I sent a transaction to this address, but it didn't arrive. Could you help me? And you realize those people, they aren't really customers for the kind of thing you're offering.
The funny thing is, like, everyone who had email early on also got lots of those emails, right? I think we'll reach convergence eventually, but I think we're quite a whiles away from convergence. I actually think primarily, like, the centralization, decentralization question is primarily going to be a geographical question about, like, what the country government is accepting of. And it depends both on the physical size of the country, as well as the ability for the country to control their population, which has a lot to do with just, like, resources. So I think, like, what's going to happen is the smaller countries, like the El Salvadors of the world, will just, like, trend towards decentralization. And this will be better for them because they will be able to hook better into the global economy that is already the crypto economy. But over time, real world assets and real world economy will start getting added to that pool, and that's what's going to happen there. And then there's the countries, obviously, like China, but also, like, Yifan and I are working in various capacities in, like, Saudi Arabia. I think that's going to be pretty centralized. So, like, to the point just now, I think, like, so Animoca has a partnership with Neom, which is, like, Saudi Arabia's, like, futuristic tech city, and they did actually open their first region this past couple weeks, so pretty excited about that. I'm looking forward to visit. But I do think that, like, Neom will issue some kind of stablecoin in the future, right? Depending on how you want to define stablecoin. But will it be totally centralized? No, it's not going to be CBDC, in my opinion. But or at least I can see a world where it's not a CBDC. But it is decentralized, like, technically. But like many of the more centralized chains out there, if push comes to shove, you really want to control it, then the government will be able to control it, right? Because they'll spread the nodes around, like, trusted parties like you and us and a few other institutions. So in theory it's decentralized, but if they need to call Animoca up, like, we need you to do something, like, we'll probably pick up the phone.
That makes sense that it ends up breaking down by geography. Terence, I'm curious, just as a builder in the space with the Humanity Protocol, how you're approaching centralization, decentralization, whether you're going to use the Neom stablecoin.
So I think, from what we're building aside, I think from a decentralization or centralization perspective, if we're looking at most of the applications, I don't think people really care.
The users don't care.
Users don't care. People just care about what they're trying to do and whether it's easy for them to do it. I think so far, most decentralized products have terrible user experience. If there is, like the idea is that, most of us still use something like Facebook or use something like WhatsApp. Okay. If there is a version of WhatsApp that is not owned by Facebook, where, we control all our own messages, data, et cetera, There's no centralized party that has access to it, but functions just as well, just as fast as WhatsApp. A lot of people would probably be willing to use it. It would still be an uphill battle because, frankly speaking, 90% of the world probably doesn't care. And if they're using WhatsApp already for the last 10 years, they'd rather still continue to use WhatsApp. But I'm imagining, a world where there's a new product that a lot of people want to use. And there is a decentralized version where you control your own data, your identity, et cetera, and then there's a version where it doesn't, and the user experiences are equal, then sure, I think some people or most people would probably pick the version where it's decentralized. But I don't think there's any situation out there right now where that's true, except for, honestly, as I said, the experience of sending USDT in large amounts without having to deal with a bank.
Right. So I think the part where, so I completely agree with Terence about the social media messaging thing, right? Like, I think I view social media as like the final boss of blockchain. Like, I think it's ages away before we start to like penetrate that ecosystem, because there's no reason to switch, right? Like, the user doesn't care.
Network effects.
But where they do care is payments. Like, in my opinion, especially when you're in a country where you don't trust the banking rails and you don't trust the payment system and things like that. And so the ability to have kind of a more decentralized infrastructure that allows for a higher level of trust, I think is absolutely there when it comes to both kind of commerce and trade. And it will start in these like less regulated, less developed, quite frankly, places where this is actually where a lot of the USDT, especially on Tron, flow is coming from already.
Banking the unbanked, product market fit for crypto. So on that note, and kind of getting back to Terence's point, people tend to do the thing that involves less friction. And that comes up not just with decentralization, but also with privacy. In this future world where we have some mix of centralized, decentralized, stable coins, maybe we have some floating cryptocurrencies that we're paying in, we're using this to deploy AI agents, we're using some kind of on-chain identity. Is there privacy in this world? Can people expect to have any kind of financial privacy?
I think, it's, I'm just going to start. I think it's probably too late. It's like, even if the U.S. government wanted to stop people having guns, it's pretty difficult to take back all the guns, right? So there's a lot of data, whether it's financial data, privacy data, personal information, whatever it is about all of us that's out there already, owned by a number of different companies out in the public. I think it's impossible to take it back, but I think moving forward, applications, services, companies that we interact with, potentially leveraging, some of the technologies that people here are building could make it better, let's say, for the next generation. But at least our generation, all our information's out there.
Is that using like ZK technology? How do you think this ends up working?
Yeah, I think first let's, maybe define and clarify privacy and define what exactly privacy is versus anonymity, right? So privacy being what we had, today and previously in terms of if a transaction is happening and, identities are tied to that transaction, a select few folks or entities have access to that or can see that tie. Whereas anonymity, I can see transactions, let's say on the blockchain, everything that's happening, but I can't actually tie that to a single, know the identity behind that transaction, right? So I think that there needs to be a distinction between the two. And Web3 in particular is very looking for, right? It's the industry that's looking for, the community looking for anonymity. And so we have to find a way, can we bridge the two together? Can we actually allow for transactions to happen while remain compliant, right? Can transactions still happen? Can those transactions, can I have my identity hidden in public view, all right, from public view, transact, but still remain compliant? And I think that's the thing that we need to figure out how to sort of link the two.
So you imagine that the public won't be able to see and trace back to you what all of your transactions are, but some regulator will have KYC on all of them through some identity solution.
Yes, and that's where, to your question, that's where technologies like ZK are able to bridge that gap, right? So we're able to leverage ZK and other similar technologies to be able to make that happen.
So zero knowledge proofs, as in I walk into the bar, I need to show my ID that I'm over 21. I don't need to show my address or my age or my weight. They can just verify that I'm 21 without looking at any of my other info. So something like that just shows your ID to regulators. Yifan, do you agree with that? Is that where we're going?
This is more complicated than money. Okay, so first we are social animals. We live in groups. So which means we need identity to do a license. For example, you are seeing me and after 10 days you still recognize me. It's you gain my facial data, into your database. Then next time you can, recognize me. So that's why if I say zero knowledge, there's no way we can even know each other. So which means no matter it's offline or online, you still need your identity somewhere. But the decentralization, what really give you a choice where you can use what identity and the regulation and the market, normal, how you can release that to minimize that so which means that technology will be super complicated. Okay, that's why I say it's more complicated than money. It's the technology. It's very, very complicated. Think about it, for example, for payment, the only payment the government doesn't know is cash, right? I pay you, and nobody knows I pay you. So cash, how you can make digital payment as cash? It doesn't even work. That's why, in my opinion, retail CBC doesn't work yet. Okay, because there's no way you can make a digital money as cash. Nobody can trace that, and the settlement it's like in seconds. I give you done. That's best payment. I love cash. Okay, but it's too expensive to handle cash, right? You need a truck. You need to collect all the money, everything. So, but the privacy is same thing. How you can make sure you own your privacy. But when government requires, they can still access that. But when you do something, if it doesn't require you to review yourself, then don't review yourself. I think the whole thing for privacy, for decentralized, when centralized, when your identity is centralized, is not out of your control. Okay, the only way you can control your money and your identity is decentralization. So that's why, but I don't think the technology are there yet. Probably takes next like 5 to 10 years. But I think right now, including many governments, including the Chinese government, they understand how important the privacy is. Okay.
Why? What do they think is important about privacy? Like, why would a government want citizens to have privacy?
Because when they have privacy, they feel safe. When they feel safe, they produce and they innovate.
But do you think, I'm just curious, do you think they actually are trying to push forward privacy? I mean, if you look at Europe, now it used to be the case that transactions you have to report for 50 grand. Now you have to report for anything that's more than like $200.
Yeah,
right. So
it happens, everywhere, right? So, but one example is the project we already built for the central government called the China Real DID. It's basically we build an anonymous layer on top of a national citizen database. So, and you can store your public key, a private key and a public key, the public key into national database. Then, which means when you go to a website, when you log in, you don't need to put your, email address, phone number, everything. You can actually use a private key signature to log in. So, which means the commercial platform could serve you without knowing anything. Absolutely nothing, like phone number, email address. Even a Gmail address is personal information. Okay, so that why they even build it, because and they cannot trace anything, because where you use your private key and whoever the platform is get that public key anonymously and to verify your private key, that whole thing they cannot trace anything. Why they even build it? That's one direction. I mean, it's more advanced than any country. Okay, so far. So why they even build it? It's because they just published the data privacy law. So they need to make sure enforce the law but why they even publish the law? So
It's interesting. I didn't know that China built that. Like that's at least directionally really interesting, right? Actually, my view on this is like I think it's really user driven. I actually have no doubt that the technology will be there to do these things if you so choose to do so. But I don't think that there's enough user demand for true privacy and or true anonymity for it to really stick unless something significant changes. Like I think that most users have they have some awareness that like their information is out there and they don't really care. So I think it's really just a user demand thing. I actually don't doubt the technology will get there.
The thing I'm struck by from what you all said, and I hear this friction, demand, I hear this pretty frequently, so probably is correct. But I'm struck by this idea that we'll have a world where governments want people to feel safe and want to provably offer them private tools so that they innovate more from feeling safe. That's something that surprises me.
And maybe this is like the whole geographical developing country developed, because I think in the developed world, people really don't care that much. And I also think the governments are increasingly, what's the right word?
Encroaching
into like users' privacy. Whereas I think probably it's the opposite in the developing world, right? I think in the developing world, there's probably some level of risk that people think and care about. And so maybe that is going to be the user base that wants to adopt these privacy technologies, which I think will happen, right? I think it's not like it's very imaginable given our current tech infrastructure. Of course, it's complicated implementation, but it's imaginable how we'll get there.
Yeah, that's striking that we could have a technology like this really spread outwards from the emerging world and spread a more privacy preserving vision. And that seems like a really interesting outcome. Let's get to the end game. Let's talk about AI. I think we all probably agree, and definitely tell me if you disagree, that we are soon going to not be the most intelligent thing on Earth, that there is this intelligence that has been growing, and in Google, in places here, in OpenAI, in Microsoft, and that we're going to have AIs doing a lot of transactions on our behalf, maybe even having their own wallets, maybe even having their own jobs. Where do blockchains come into this AI world? What can we build for humans in order to have this work out well for us? What do you think? I mean, maybe like compare and contrast with what WorldCoin is doing might be interesting for you to start.
Well, I think for us, when we think about AI and sort of what we're doing with Humanity Protocol, so I mentioned we're building an identity-based blockchain. So some of you guys might be familiar with something called WorldCoin, where they're scanning your eyeballs to check whether you're a human being or not. So we're also using biometrics.
Proof of personhood.
They used to also have wording called proof of humanity here and there. They stopped using it completely. Now they call it proof
It's your brand now.
Yeah, so they now start calling it proof of human, which is weird grammar. But, so... so for us, it's also sort of biometrics based, proof of personhood, proof of humanity. And then we're actually using that as a springboard for other pieces of credentials, right? Like a human has many different attributes, where you go to school, where you work, your PII. And then sort of the more fundamental one is like whether you're a human being or not, right? So we're building a blockchain specifically for this. And we think it's important, right? I think it's important for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm going to get to the AI piece soon, but number one is that we actually think with most blockchains right now, where everybody talks about, better user experience, lower transaction fees, higher TPS. We actually think that most blockchains are going to get botted to shits, regardless of how great their TPS is. And frankly, the cheaper it is, the easier it is to go bot them. The only reason why most blockchains are not clogged day in, day out is because there's not much people using it. When the, Bored Apes guys were doing their airdrops or the NFTs and all that sort of stuff, Ethereum was completely clogged because there was a financial incentive for people to go do it, right? If imagine if there's a big multi-million, billion-dollar airdrop tomorrow happening on Solana, on Sui, whatever. It really doesn't matter what your TPS is. It's, people are going to go run bots and scripts to clog it, right? So we actually think with Humanity Protocol, one of the interesting things we're doing with our own layer 2 is we're going to prioritize transactions. So there's going to be, when it comes to sequencing transactions, there's going to be a queue for all the pseudonymous transactions where we don't know who you are, we don't care who you are. And then there's also going to be a queue for transactions where it's, it's from addresses that are proven to be human beings.
So you're going to make AI second-class citizens.
So we're going to make AI second-class citizens. But I think one thing that's interesting that we're also going to do with credentials is that I was talking to a friend, I think last week, and he's a really big believer that with the proliferation of AI agents, there's going to be government regulation stipulating that all AI agents will need some sort of credential, and that credential has to be tied in with a human credential. So that there needs to be a human being that's taking, if somebody taking responsible for what an AI agent is doing, right? Like if you have a trading bot or an AI agent that's like causing a flash crash in the stock market, whoever owns or controls that AI agent will probably need to take responsibility. Because right now, if that happens, it's some UBS trader that goes to jail. If an AI agent does that, probably whoever's controlling it, owning it, will have to take responsibility, right? So I actually think when it comes to what we're trying to do with Proof of Humanity, I think in the blockchain space, it's important because we actually think, the more people use this technology, the more everything's going to get clogged, given that, blockchain and crypto is so close to capital, and there are incentives for that. But then beyond that, it's also about, tying it in with AI agents. How do we prove ownership, prove control? And then third piece is, obviously as a human being, we have many different attributes that, people might want to check against, use for, as you said, going to bar, being able to check that you're above 18 or above 21 without knowing any other pieces of information, allowing you to trade on a platform knowing that you're not a sanctioned individual, or you're an accredited investor without having to know anything else about you. So these are all the things that we're enabling.
Fascinating about the fast lane for people and the slow lane for the bots, and having to credential the bots that they belong to somebody. It reminds me of that machines can't be allowed to make management decisions because machines can't be held responsible. Agree, disagree? What do other folks think? You want to chime in? Maybe Minh?
Full disclosure, Animoca is an investor in Humanity Protocol. No, I mean, I think it's really important, actually. I think that it's going to be a pretty weird world, right? Like, I think in, probably less than 24 months' time, the AI will be able to simulate this video of this room, us talking, and us all saying random things in, pretty high-quality detail, undifferentiable from, a real-life video. So I'm not sure that I agree with the AIs are going to be smarter. It depends how you define smarter. Computers have been smarter than humans in many ways for forever, basically. But I think that humans are fundamentally just a different thing from a computer. And so, I think that we will really, I probably see a world where, I'm not an AI expert, I probably see a world where we really lean into the humanity thing, because the AIs will be able to do so many of the basic tasks that we do every day. Honestly, I use AI so much for if you get an email from me, apologies, it's probably written by ChatGPT, first of all. If you get a WhatsApp from me, it's not. But if you get an email from me and it's any more than 3 lines, it's almost certainly AI.
Noted.
Just so many of these. So, and I think actually the one area where I don't know how it's gonna play, I really don't know, is the financial markets, because I think clearly the AIs are gonna be so much better at, not only will they, because right now, generally speaking, the quants still develop the algorithms to do the trading. But I think it's one of the things I think the AIs are going to be able to reason into better than humans is going to be they'll be able to develop their own algorithms. So the AI will be the algorithm, and they'll develop their own algorithms, and they'll get better and better. So you just basically not need to have human traders. You have the first AI, and then after that. So then it comes back to like, sorry, I'm just like a little bit rambling, but then it comes back to like,
Let's go.
what are we gonna value? Like that's really the question that I ask myself when I think about this problem. Is humans have kind of always valued what other humans value, right? We have never really valued what computers value, and so how does that play out, right? Like an AI is never gonna value like a Bordeaux wine or an Hermes bag. Like it's just not. That's not gonna be. Maybe it'll be part of programming, but I don't think so. So how does that play out? And I see that as like the fundamental question is like in 5 to 10 years when AI agents are everywhere and they're doing a myriad of things, what are the things that we are going to value? So that's a question I ask myself.
That's some food for thought. What are we going to value? You guys want to chime in?
I do feel that this future can and will happen. And I'm a big believer of what Humanity Protocol is obviously doing. I do believe that at some point we have to be able to differentiate what's AI and what's not. Therefore what becomes really important around this is, how do we redefine trust between AI and humans? How do we redefine privacy between it? Particularly, how does an AI work, right? It's basically gobbling up data, right? And in today's most advanced LLMs, actually, probably already consumes almost all the publicly available data today. And so it's starting to need to consume private data. And so how can we build a technology to be able to allow for responsible use of that while training, LLMs? You talked a little bit about ZK earlier. There's a field in ZK for ZK-ML, right, and machine learning that does exactly this. So I think that's what I think about when I see a future where AI is basically taking over. Maybe taking over is the wrong word, but the majority of things that are happening are being controlled by AIs, and you therefore need a way to distinguish the two.
But what do you think about like, just the basic interaction? So even for this panel, right? Like I can take, so Yatsio is the chairman of Animoca Brands. He has enough YouTube video where I can literally create an AI that would just say whatever Yat would say. Like you can ask it the question in his voice and say what he would say. Like that's not in a world where that is possible, where I could literally go to my computer and be like, tell me what Yifan is going to think about this thing. And it will have like a 99% answer of like what Yifan thinks, because Yifan has enough publicly available material. Like, what is that world like? I actually don't have a good answer, so I'm very interested to hear.
And it's funny that you bring this up, right? So I'm a pretty shitty programmer, but what I actually decided to do, literally like last weekend, okay, because I had some spare time, I asked ChatGPT how to take all my own personal WhatsApp messages and train an LLM against that. Okay. So I took Meta's Llama model. It was an experiment. I wanted to create a chatbot where, imagine Minh or, somebody was texting me, how would I respond? So I deliberately took predominantly messages from friends and ex-girlfriends, and trained a llama model against that. It ended up taking like quite a long time because I was doing it on my laptop. What really shocked me was not the quality of the output, because it was not enough data and I did not have enough compute on my MacBook to really do a good job. What really was crazy to me was the fact that me, with essentially computer science 101 level of engineering skills, could actually go build this entire thing over the course of one day, because ChatGPT, literally every single thing I asked, I literally just asked, tell me how I can take all my WhatsApp messages with my friends and ex-girlfriends and run that into a model and produce a chatbot. Gave me step-by-step guides, et cetera, et cetera. And then every single error message I had in my terminal for any Python script, copy and paste it in. It just told me how to fix it, what libraries I'm missing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's getting pretty insane. And all I'm simply saying is that soon, with all this data that is out there, and this obviously it's my private data, but with all that data that's out there, whether it's of Yats or Minh's or whatever, then there's going to be sort of AI agents that are extrapolating from, hey, you know what? Let me combine Yat and Amanda and create a new person, right? And that person's ideas and thoughts might actually be, somewhat differentiated. And then you combine that with another person or whatnot. So I actually think very soon you will not really be, you already can't differentiate from existing people. I think very soon the biggest problem is you can't even differentiate whether this is an original being or not. And so I think that's why, back to my point, having that original thing, whether it's a credential or whatever, to say, okay, you know what, this is a human being, or this piece of content actually came from the root of the source, is going to be very important.
I think this is actually a really inspiring note to end on, and I promised Gary that I would wrap us up on time. But the internet made it possible for anyone to be a content creator. Blockchain made it possible for anyone to be an entrepreneur, and now AI is enabling anyone to become a builder and a programmer. Please come and say hi to our panelists, because if you correspond with them digitally, it is not them.
Definitely, if you're going to be Terence's girlfriend, not Terence.
He's optimized the algo. So we'll hopefully get to chat with you in a little bit. Thanks for listening.